Now I can hear myself. Is it very loud? Yeah, it's pretty loud. I speak loud as well. Weird for being a Swedish person, but I hope that you can hear me quite okay. Hey, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Marten Bokedal. I am the EMEA Solutions Strategy Director at Optimise. I find it quite interesting to see so many people here today as a whole. During the pandemic, people said that trade shows was over and it's dead. But I guess we are here in these days for other reasons as well. And I hope to be able to provide you three things today. And the first thing is unique data points that never been showed before at all, ever. It's kind of a bold statement. The second thing is a little bit of inspiration from companies that we work with. And the third thing is hopefully that we can also have a little bit of fun. That's my goal of today. If you haven't heard about Optimise at all, just going to do a quick introduction about us. We are a fully composable digital experience platform. What that actually means is that it provides everything that we see you need to create a good customer experience. It's content management and content marketing, so everything from ideation, creation, planning, and publishing of content. It's B2B and B2C commerce for the monetization. And of course, what we're going to talk a little bit more about today is the data, experimentation, and personalization of this as well. Cool. So I do get a little bit nervous speaking abroad. I'm from Sweden, so I'm not from here. And it's not just because this is not my native language. It's also a little bit because it's a little bit of different cultures when you speak. In the beginning of the year, I was in Italy speaking, and after the session, a woman came up to me, and we started to talk about the session. So, of course, you're a little bit curious, so I asked her, so what did you think about the presentation? She looked at me a little bit quiet, and she said, well, I liked it, but my colleague was a little bit disappointed. British people are very polite. Swedish people are quite quiet. If you ask a person about their opinion, regardless if they actually think it's shit, you say it's okay. That's how it is. But I mean, I'm in Italy, so I had to ask, of course, what did she not like about the presentation? And she said, well, she actually loved the presentation, but she thought you're going to look different. And she put up her phone and put up this image of, this is Alexander Skarsgård, a Swedish actor. This is not great news for us guys, or us men. Sitting outside Colosseum, sipping a cappuccino, maybe want to download the Tinder app. That's not the best way of looking at the expectations of how a Swedish person should look like. But it made me start thinking afterwards as well. Because I'm born in the 80s, I grew up thinking all the Italian people look like this. And the more I started to think about this, me and Alexander Skarsgård are quite similar. We're both male, we're both between 40s and 50s. We're both born in Sweden, in Stockholm, in a part that is called Södermalm. We both share for the same football team. At one point in life, we also both had long hair. But apart from that, the way we're actually looking at the world is very different. This is actually my two best friends. It's Ante and Mackan. You don't choose your friends, that's just how it is. I'm not sure if I'm short, if they're long. But the way that we usually meet and the way that we look at each other used to be more like that, and it used to be more like this. But the longer time it comes, the more we see that we are now more of a click, a dot in analytics, a checkout, something else, and that is actually growing exponentially as well. So between 2020 and 2025, we will see that the digital interactions that we have across the board is going to be increased by around 300%. And this, of course, affects e-commerce as well. And we see that e-commerce, and especially maybe retail, but e-commerce as a whole, is seeing a lot of change. And you have to be creative, and you have to always innovate to stay relevant. The other thing I can see is also that there's nothing special being able to transact online anymore, to just have a web shop. Anyone can put that up today. So you also have to create a brand. And the third one, what might be a little bit of a bold statement, is that the rise of digital has somewhat also actually killed creativity. And I'm a firm believer that modern experiences is an intersection somewhere between creativity and science. And that is a little bit what we're going to focus on today. But even so, I speak to customers on a daily, weekly basis. And I'm surprised to see that despite digital has become so important in commerce, it still looks a lot like this. You push in traffic somewhere and you push, and out comes a few customers. So that's the conversion rate. And it's a big question around how important is actually the conversion rate. I'm going to provide you a little bit new examples as well. Since I'm from the Nordics, you're going to learn a little bit about Nordic companies as well. So Coop is actually one of the largest groceries. It's like Tesco in the Nordics as well. A lot of people look like this. So what do you have to do to increase your online sales? You hire a CRO manager to increase the conversions. But I could claim that conversion rate is not always the most important thing. And why is that? ClassPass is probably something people know more about here. So ClassPass, for you that doesn't know it, it's like a gym card and you can go to different types of gyms. And they have to see the same thing. Beginning of January, a lot of sign-ups. People go there in January, February. But somewhere there in March, people start to see like, well, Mandalorian is on Netflix, I'll go tomorrow, etc. And they lose people. So they want to retain them and make them come back. And they had a hypothesis. If we provide them with 2 weeks of free training instead of 1 week, they have more time to look at like, maybe they were doing yoga, but maybe they can also try cross-training or something else. So you can have a think about if you believe that it actually increased the conversion rate. And the answer is, yes, it did. It had an uplift with 25% in conversions and 19% in retained members. Huge result. But still, they decided to keep the 1 week. And why is that? Because we're not in the growth stage anymore. We have to be profitable. We look at the resilience as well. So providing people 2 weeks is also a cost for them. And the cost for them to actually provide every new member 2 weeks did not live up to the expectations of the sale in the end. So conversion rate is not just the only thing that we have to think about. But how do we actually make more confident decisions in the end? And how can we do that? I promised you to provide you a little bit more of data. So this is actually a brand new research that we did for around 130,000 approximately experiments run by our customers. The report is going to be launched in 2 weeks. I'm not even sure I'm actually allowed to show these numbers, so please be a little bit careful if you want to tweet them, because I think my manager would be a little bit upset with me. But I'm going to provide you some results of these statistics as well from e-commerce managers around from this day. And it's a little bit with data. And data-driven, we talk about being data-driven all the time. And it's not that you're always making the right decision, but you're definitely at least making them more informed. So if you're looking at like how do we make decisions if based on our gut is the least type of data moving up to what customers say, there's different parts of where you can see that experimentation is more or less on the top of it. Does that mean that you can skip everything else and just do business experimentation because that is the best way of making very informed decisions? I wouldn't say so either, because if you're looking at data as well, is that the companies that do business experimentations based on the analytics and data is becoming way more successful as well. So it's just about making sure that you have to do a lot of things today. It's not one or the other, but you have to follow that maturity. Do we really have to be data-led? Why can't we just do whatever else does? We get information from customers and competitors all the time. Well, Scholl did do a test of this. So they took 4 of the low-hanging fruits, examples of how they could be running experiments. Everyone knows when you're on Amazon and you get a timer that says you can buy this television in 3 hours, 13 seconds, and 2 minutes, etc., before the price goes up. Do you think it works if you're selling shavers or foot cream? Actually, it did. It worked well. They looked at Instagram as well to see, well, we have a nice navigation, so the stories, maybe we should just create that navigation flow to look a little bit more like Instagram. Did that work? It didn't work at all. Out of the 4 experiments that they were running based on low-hanging fruit, 1 was successful, 2 actually had a negative impact on what they wanted to do, and 1 had no impact at all. There's some good news in this, though, because if you guys actually know what delivers value, it means that since we see that around 25% of every test we do becomes successful, you can walk into work on Monday, and then you don't have to come back to work, because on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you're not delivering any value for your company. You can even actually more hurt the company with what you're doing. Why not just ask the customers? We should be customer-led. Ask the customers what they do. I think it was David Ogilvy that said that people don't do what they say say what they think, and they don't think what they feel. Also in the Nordics, we did a large, it wasn't us, a research company did a large survey around 40 of the biggest retailers in different types of industries of what do people say is important and what is actually important when they are actually making, the sales and the buy. And it doesn't come as a surprise, because if price would be the only way, the most important thing, we would all be wearing the same clothes. We would all be looking the same way. So we don't always say what we do. So it comes back to what we're going to talk a little bit about today, the 3 ways of how you can maximize ROI by looking at the whole customer funnel. And it's a little bit about making sure that you engage people that comes to your site. You have to, of course, convert them, but you also have to make them come back. So what do you actually have to do then? There's 2 things you have to do when you're optimizing in commerce. One thing is removing friction, and that you usually do late in the funnel or stage when people actually want to do something. There's nothing that is worse than when you want to check out and you just can't do it, or you can't buy with Google Pay or whatever. But the earlier you are, you also have to actually increase engagement to make people interested in what you do. And this shows also in the research that it's very hard to optimize bottom line. It's very hard to convince or do things that makes a big difference in the cart checkouts or in the revenue, but it's way easier to influence the customer journey in earlier or other stages. So what can we actually do to listen to the digital body language and remove friction or increase engagement? It's of course looking at, what do you want them to do? In commerce, revenue is the amount of visitors that you have times the revenue per visitor. That's kind of what you can look at, but there's multiple things you can do during this journey as well. So how can we make people more engaged by, for example, increasing conversion rates? We're coming back to Coop because we talked about them as well. So this is actually a product page, and it's quite cluttery. And they did a lot of different kind of things, small things. One of the things that they did was actually put in some text and content around that whatever you buy, you can ship back for free. We have lowest price guarantee, etc. So just giving a little bit of a confidence. But they did also other things. They removed navigation to remove clutter, to make sure that it was more stylistic. And they also improved the part of the search. That didn't just say search, but they tried to populate that with things that they might want to search for. And why is that important? Well, personalization is not just about being creepy and trying to personalize the content. It's also about removing things that is not necessary. So this is one of the biggest retailers within sportswear. And they understood also that companies or people that come into the website, that don't just care about looking at what type of content do they have on the website in terms of I want to buy shoes. They also had a state of mind, like how much does it cost? How much can it cost? So by actually being able to provide those things, different places in the website, you remove everything that is above what they would be able to pay for, or underneath what we're able to do in terms of quality. And just to prove that as well, they had another hypothesis to say, if we're showing more clothes and more things in the small little boxes that we have in the e-commerce, there will be more options and will show more interest in what want to buy. But it actually shows that it decreased everything in the conversion rate about it, because we don't want to show too many examples. We don't want to give people too many options, because we do get confused. We want just to give enough relevant for them to actually be able to do what they want to do. But it's of course also to make them pay and to convert customers more. The part of experimentation from Optimise started at the Obama campaign from the beginning. And he had an idea. They are gathering a lot of money for their campaigns. So like, how can we optimize the campaigns to get more people to contribute? So one of these things is, of course, looking at what kind of call to actions do we have to have. And what do you guys think that it's actually most important thing here? You can think about it. What would make people actually convert? And it's a trick question, because it depends. It all depends on the relationship that you have. If you are a registered user, if the first time you're donating, if you donated before. And that is exactly how it is also with the customer lifecycle and we have with companies. And I'll make sure to send you all the slides afterwards, everyone who's been here, because otherwise you're going to work out in the way that ClassPass does as well, because I know it's going fast. Same way, a retailer in Sweden that I worked with, Lyko, understood that to get new people to actually buy from them and test them, it's, you can provide them with discounts. But if you're only providing them discounts and discounts and discounts, not only do you devaluate your brand, but you're also crushing your margins. So instead, they're trying to understand what people want, because people don't buy products, people buy outcomes. And instead, inspire them with type of content that could see, how can we make you get less dry skin or less greasy hair? And in that way, actually using content. Because what would websites or commerce stores be unless we actually had content? Content is kind of the new currency of human connection. And I've been together with my wife for 20 years. We're married for 4. A lot of Netflix shows during that time. One of the favorite Netflix show for her was Sons of Anarchy. And I kind of realized why, because this is Jax Teller. He's a pretty good looking guy. Around 10 years ago, I had an idea for her birthday. It's like, I'm going to take a picture for me looking like Jax Teller. And I see a lot of people smiling right now, and I understand. So I actually called my photographer that we work with, and here was the result. And there's something missing in it, yeah. I just also felt the same way as you do. It was like, this is not a one-to-one thing. So I actually went back to him and said, like, hey, could you maybe help a little bit with this? Could you make this pop a little bit? And he did, and it looks better, definitely. I also look a little bit more beefy than I did, even without the ClassPass. And this took around 5 hours. We've been talking about generative AI and DALL-E and everything. So just for fun, before the summer, I asked him the same. Provide me 3 different types of examples, but use AI in this. And this was the result. There's 2 things that I could say with this. One thing is that generative AI is not going to replace people in the short term, but it took him 30 minutes to produce 3 different versions of me, and that says something as well when it comes to content and how important that is. Looking at the data in business experimentation, most people are only looking at 2 variants. So you have the control, and you do something different and see what the winner is. But when we're looking at successful business experimentation, we can see that the more variants you have, the more likely you are to succeed. That comes into creativity. How can you create hypotheses? How can you create more content, more products, more images, more text to be able to do this in a good way as well? So we do talk about data a lot with this, and one thing that is already in marketing is content recommendations or product recommendations. So again, we're coming back to Coop. They started with product recommendations and just wanted to test it. So they tested it in what people clicked on before, and they actually increased their revenue with 2%. But they thought, maybe there's something else. And you should know that algorithms is not a black box either. It's just based on something that people have been doing. So they wanted to see, well, if we change it and test against the algorithm that shows what they previously actually bought, and it went up to 6%. But I thought, can we do something even more relevant? And then they started to look at what kind of things can we do as affinity, things that they put in their basket but didn't check out. Other people also bought this, things that could, in combination, see who's this person, what can they do? And they saw an increase. So this is also how you can see that the content and data together, looking at them can create high income. But it's not just actually about increasing your sales. It's also about things that can lower prices. For commerce, depending on who you want to check out with, can have a big effect on the cost. So buy now, pay later is usually way more costly than putting it in your credit card. So this company just wanted to make sure at the end of the transactions, like, can we get more people to use credit cards? And what could we do? And by that, actually showcasing what kind of credit cards they could use to make also a little bit more safe. And they got an uplift of 5% of more people using credit cards. But in this case, that meant $2.7 million in small things. So, last but not least, even if you're making sure that customers come in, and you also see that you can convert them, doesn't even mean that it's a profitable customer. Most business actually needs customers to come back to become profitable because the cost of acquisition is very high. Norwegian do knows that the more they know about their customer, the better they can serve them. And for them to know them better and know them more, they want them to log in. So just simple design changes in highlighting the benefits of logging in when you're ordering a flight provided an uplift of 6%. But then they also thought, where should this information be? And they tested it on above the folder or actually putting it below. And they could see that a staggering 32% more of customers actually logged in after when it was in the bottom. And this actually goes against all the principle, because if you work with conversion optimization, you know that above the fold is usually good. But that's not how we buy flights. We want to go to Bermuda, and we just throw ourselves in and put in our details, and we don't stop until we're actually supposed to buy. And that's where the actually information is useful. That's the same thing also with Misguided, looking at how can we serve our customers, and our customers are very different. It's way different if you buy something once a year, once a quarter, once a month, or every week. In this case, they had an offer of paying £9.99 for free shipment for the rest of the year. And you wouldn't do that if you only thought about buying once. But by understanding buying patterns and by understanding when can we push this message, they could also see that the people that actually took this message and actually bought it became hyper loyal. Because once you actually invest in this, that's the place where you're going to go and buy for the rest of the year. And this is also something that the data shows. When you actually combine experimentation with personalization and looking at not just how can we do a test of everyone, but start to look at customers in different ways, who they are depending on what they've been buying, loyalty, or other types of segments, you're becoming way more successful in your business experimentation or in your optimization of sites. And it's not just about increasing sales. Returns is costly, and it's bad for the environment for every business. And Brooks saw that as well. And they could see a pattern for some types of customers to see why is it that people actually return things. And one of the things, and maybe you have to guess, is what they could see is when people bought the same pair of shoes in 2 sizes. And that's very bad, because at the moment they transact, they already know that they have to return at least one of them. They already know that they need to ship that back, which is bad for the environment. And by understanding this and providing content and giving guidance and a pop-up to say, hey, we believe that we know what type of shoe and size that you should have. Please have a look at this type of guidance for it. They could reduce that with 80%. So just to sum this up a little bit, there's been a lot of content today, and I know that. But we firmly believe that the digital presence is becoming, or if it is not already is, your most important product. Content kind of sits in the heart of that, but to make it also efficient, you have to more or less balance creativity with science. If you want to speak a little bit more about this, or if you're actually just interested in gifts, we also have a little bit of a competition in our booth, in which you can win a new Apple Watch. I think they released it actually on Friday, and I got the only one that was able to buy in the store. So we have a little bit of a competition. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you in the booth.